Good morning, everyone. Very, very exciting day today. Welcome to General Dynamics Land Systems Canada. I am Dave Haggerty, Vice President and General Manager of GDLS Canada. Thank you for joining us at our London facility for what promises to be a truly momentum occasion for our company, our employees, our more than 600 suppliers across the country, and more importantly, Canadians. We are very pleased to welcome back the Minister of National Defence, and a special welcome to our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Mark Carney. Minister McGuinty, you have been a tremendous champion of Canada's defence industry, of our highly skilled workforce, and of the important work being done here in London. We are grateful for your leadership, your support, and your continued confidence in our team. We take enormous pride in designing and building world-class products, and we never lose sight of who we build them for, the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces. We are excited to share this important day with all of you. It is now my great pleasure to invite to the podium Canada's Minister of National Defence, the Honourable David McGuinty.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Prime Minister Carney, our partners from General Dynamics Land Systems Canada, members of the Canadian Armed Forces, distinguished guests, thank you all for being here. We're living through a defining moment. Around the world, the assumptions that shaped our security for decades are being challenged. Conflicts are growing more complex. Technology is transforming the character of warfare at extraordinary speed. And the competition for industrial capacity, critical supply chains, and strategic advantage has become as important as the competition on the battlefield itself. In this environment, Canada cannot afford to stand still. We must be prepared. Prepared to defend our sovereignty, prepared to meet our commitments to our allies, and prepared to ensure that the brave women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces have the capabilities that they need, not years from now, but when they are called upon to serve. And that is exactly what this government is doing, your government is doing. We are rebuilding Canada's defence capabilities. We are modernizing how we procure equipment. Nous renforçons notre base industrielle de défense et nous veillons à ce que chaque dollar investi dans la défense renforce également l'économie canadienne, soutiennent les travailleurs canadiens et bâtissent une capacité souveraine ici, chez nous, here, at home, for us. The strength of our armed forces depends on the strength of Canadian industry, on Canadian innovation, on Canadian workers, and on our ability to build, sustain, and innovate right here at home. Today marks another important step in that effort. It reflects a government that is acting with urgency, a government that understands that investing in defence means investing in Canada, and a government that is determined to build both a stronger Canadian Armed Forces and a stronger Canadian economy. It is now my pleasure to introduce Canada's Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Mark Carney, whose leadership, whose personal drive and commitment has brought all of us here today. Prime Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister McGuinty, to David. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. Thank you all. Heather, others said that's it. That's it for the Daves. Before I begin, I do want to acknowledge something that we're all feeling, sensing. Thousands of Canadians' lives have been upended, are being upended by the wildfires across this country, flooding in Manitoba again. And on behalf of all Canadians, everyone in this room, all Canadians across this country, I want to thank the courageous firefighters the first responders, the Indigenous and local leaders who are working tirelessly to keep our people safe. And in the presence of the Minister and the Canadian Armed Forces, I want to acknowledge their contribution. The RCAF is providing search and rescue aircraft. The Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre is providing helicopters. We're in close communication with our provincial municipal counterparts, and we'll stand ready and will be providing additional assistance as needed, because Canadians always look after each other. Now, we're here today in London, General Dynamics Land Systems Canada, at the headquarters, not just the headquarters, but the factory, not just the factory, but the Research and Development Center. Soup to nuts, the entire operation. I just had an amazing tour that only began to scratch the surface of this amazing company, this amazing facility, amazing workforce, and I want to thank Heather for that tour, thank the whole team at GDLS Canada for hosting us. There's more than 1,700 Canadians who work in this factory, designing and building the armored vehicles that roll into service around the world for the Canadian Armed Forces and our allies. And that's where I want to begin. I want to begin with the people who depend on what's built here. Over the past year, Canada has been strengthening our ability to defend ourselves at home, to protect North America, to support our allies. The Canadian Armed Forces are deployed now across a single, very large crescent that runs from our Arctic across the European high north, down through the Baltics to Latvia. In the Canadian Arctic, we now have 365-day, year-round presence on land, sea, air, and space. Our forces are working with Nordic partners under the NATO umbrella to provide collective defense in the high north, including on exercises such as cold response. And in Latvia, recently, just last week actually, the Minister of National Defense and I announced that we are extending and expanding our leadership role protecting NATO's eastern flank, literally on the front line with Russia through Operation Reassurance. Now, that presence, that service, that sacrifice of the women and men of our armed forces must be matched by best-in-class capabilities, because the world's changed. Les régimes autoritaires s'affirment de plus en plus. Nous faisons face à des menaces grandissantes, que l'on pense aux incursions dans l'Arctique canadien ou aux cyberattaques. Ajoutons à ce que la nature de la guerre change rapidement à cause de la prolifération des drones, de systèmes autonomes et de missiles hypersoniques. And in this more dangerous and divided world, Canadian leadership will be defined not but just by the strength of our values, but also the value of our strength. That strength must be modernized, reinforced, and built to last. That was the conviction behind our announcement just last week in Halifax to procure up to 12 submarines from Germany's TKMS, the largest defense procurement in Canadian history. That was the conviction behind our decision to procure the P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft. Same conviction, deploying the first of 15 River-class destroyers, contracting the Arctic over-the-horizon radar system, acquiring new long-range precision strike capabilities, and establishing a secure, sovereign, low Earth orbit communications constellation. And it's the same conviction behind today's announcement. L'armée canadienne a besoin de nouveaux véhicules parce qu'elle est de plus en plus présente au pays et à l'étranger. Des véhicules qui sont conçus pour durer, avec des capacités de prochaine génération qui viennent renforcer notre flotte vieillissante. Conçus pour protéger avec un blindage de pointe pour protéger nos soldats au combat et conçu pour l'avenir, avec des technologies pouvant répondre aux contraintes de la guerre moderne. The Canadian Armed Forces need a new fleet of vehicles to support their operation, not just today, but for decades to come. And to that end, Minister McGuinty and I are proud to announce the launch of a new strategic partnership with General Dynamics Land Systems Canada. It is through this partnership, our government, and this is one aspect of the partnership, let me be clear, but through this partnership, our government will invest nearly $2 billion over 4 years to build and deliver 190 armored combat support vehicles, expanding our fleet to 550 vehicles. And as the people in this room and those you represent know, these vehicles are designed to keep soldiers protected, mobile, and mission-ready in the most demanding environments. For decades, GDLS Canada has made vehicles that supported the CAF on military bases across our country, in Afghanistan, in Latvia, and also, as we just announced last week, the provision of another 35 vehicles to Ukraine to help defend themselves against Russia. Thank you, and thank you for that. And the new fleet order that we're announcing today will continue that legacy, serving our women and men in uniform at bases across the country. Every single one will be built right here at GDLS Canada's factory, right here in London. Our new partnership with GDLS Canada will create and sustain over 6,000 high-paying Canadian jobs every year over the next 8 years. There's more because behind every vehicle is an entire supply chain of Canadian ingenuity, skill, and craftsmanship. Technicians at Ryan Manufacturing in Richmond, Ontario, who build the military-grade cable and wire harness assemblies that power these vehicles and keep them connected. Steel workers at Interpro in Regina, Saskatchewan, who produce advanced armor that helps protect our troops. The engineers at Thales in Saint Laurent, who design the thermal imaging systems that allow our soldiers to operate in the toughest conditions. The electricians at IMP Aerospace and Defense in Enfield, Nova Scotia, who build the specialized components that keep these vehicles mission ready, and many, many more. All of those parts, each crafted intricately, built by Canadians from British Columbia to Nova Scotia, arrive here on the London factory floor where workers, skilled workers, turn them into advanced armored combat vehicles. And that's part of the core strength of GDLS Canada, because they work across this entire supply chain. In fact, this company already supports well more than 10,000 jobs nationwide, above and beyond that 6,000 expected to be created by this partnership. Congratulations. So, to the workers here, you have the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces and our allies relying on you. And you also have workers and families across the country relying on you. You should feel very, very proud of what you're accomplishing. Et dans un monde plus dangereux et plus divisé, le Canada doit redoubler d'efforts pour assurer sa défense, préserver sa souveraineté et soutenir ses alliés. Et il doit le faire en investissant dans les travailleurs canadiens, l'acier canadien et le secteur canadien de la fabrication. C'est comme ça que nous allons bâtir une économie canadienne plus forte, plus indépendante et plus résiliente. Now, today's announcement is an exemplar of our defense industrial strategy in action. This is a bold plan to get our armed forces what they need, when they need it, to scale Canadian defense companies, and to put hundreds of billions of dollars that we need to protect ourselves and our allies, but to put those hundreds of billions of dollars to work in strategic sectors of our economy. We have a simple framework: build, partner, buy. First and foremost, we're focused on building in Canada, directing procurement to Canadian firms that have what we call sovereign capabilities. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're doing here today with GDLS Canada. Now, there will be many cases where we don't have all those capabilities here in Canada. So we look to partner with trusted allies. And that's what we're doing with an announcement we made in May, when we entering into negotiations to procure Saab's Global Eye surveillance aircraft. It's an early warning and control system that helps detect and deter threats across our Arctic and beyond. That contract includes a commitment to support 3,000 Canadian jobs and to ensure that 1/3 of the projected fleet, the global fleet of the Global Eye, not just the Canadian order, is manufactured here in Canada. That fleet's already expanded with the announcement by NATO that the alliance will use the Global Eye as its preferred aircraft. Now, when it's not feasible, and these cases will happen as well, when it's not feasible to build or partner, Canada is buying equipment from allies, but with clear conditions that spurs reinvestment into our defense industrial base. That's the strategy behind the submarine procurement. And as one example, as a condition of that contract, 100% of the value of the investment must be matched here in Canada. By design, that process will have by far the greatest economic impact right here in Canada. And I want to say a few words about another aspect of today's announcement, the strategic partnership framework, because this is another way in which we're building a stronger Canadian defense industry. That strategic partnership framework will help strengthen Canada's defense industrial base through long-term, predictable partnerships with the best in Canadian industry. Through this framework, we're creating a pathway for Canadian companies like GDLS Canada to work more closely with our government to build those sovereign capabilities, the armored vehicles, the drones, the icebreakers, the equipment that our armed forces needs. Companies selected as strategic partners commit to invest in Canadian research and development, the kind of R&D that happens right here, to grow domestic supply chains, the kind of supply chains that GDLS Canada has, and hire Canadian workforce and, wherever possible, union workforce. And I want to give a shout out to Unifor for their contribution. And what happens in return is that the federal government will act as an anchor customer, will accelerate approvals, and will open doors to new export markets. Commitment's simple. When Canadian companies build for Canada, Canada will build right alongside them. We launched this framework less than 2 months ago at CANSEC, and today we're announcing, as you know, GDLS Canada will be our first strategic partner. That's the kind of decisive and quick action that Canadians expect and this moment demands. Now, it's been nearly 50 years right here in London that GDLS Canada began building vehicles that has carried Canada's strength around the world. Vehicles that turn Canadian steel and ingenuity into Canadian security. Today, we're renewing that strength. We're ensuring it's built in Canada by Canadians. Nous allons réinvestir pour rebâtir et réarmer les forces canadiennes. Nous accordons aux membres de nos forces armées la plus importante augmentation salariale depuis une génération, car leur rémunération doit être à la hauteur de leurs responsabilités. Nous avons déjà atteint l'objectif de 2% fixé par l'OTAN en matière de dépenses militaires pour la première fois depuis la chute du mur de Berlin. Et cet objectif ne constitue pas un plafond pour les investissements du Canada dans le domaine de la défense, mais plutôt une référence. Notre cadre budgétaire prévoit déjà des mesures visant à consacrer 4% de notre PIB à la défense d'ici la fin de cette décennie. Nous avons également lancé la toute première stratégie industrielle de défense du Canada et mis sur pied l'Agence de l'investissement pour la défense afin de réduire les délais, de renforcer les partenariats et de répondre aux besoins de nos forces armées et de notre économie. Canada is stepping up to protect ourselves and our allies. And if we're going to deter Russian aggression in the Baltic states and across Europe, if we're going to ensure a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, if we are to assert our full sovereignty in the Arctic, and if we're to defend and promote our values of freedom, democracy, peace, we must do so from a position of strength. If we want a stronger world, if we want a safer world, we need a stronger Canada. Let me finish with this. Every day, the women and men serving in the Canadian Armed Forces make Canada stronger. They deserve the very best equipment that this country can build. And the very best this country can build is made right here at GDLS. Canada, thank you for what you do, and I look forward to your questions.
Hello, sir. Nathaniel Dove from Global News. Prime Minister, we're looking for more information on the deal to open the Gordie Howe Bridge. Canada spent $6.4 billion to build it. Is the Canadian debt repayment on the bridge included as expenses before profits are split with the U.S.?
Well, let me say, first of all, that we're very pleased that the prospect of the bridge reopening later this month, or opening later this month. This is good for Canada, good for the United States, both in the short term and the long term. What we have with the agreement with the U.S. Is as follows. And let me start with what it isn't. It's not splitting the tolls of the bridge. It is an agreement for 15 years to split net revenues. Splitting of tolls, any sharing of the toll revenue won't happen until all of the debt is repaid. We will split net revenues over the course of the first 15 years, and those net revenues are after operational costs. So it's manning the toll booths, it's maintenance, it's snow removal, a series of other operational costs. We expect that after those costs, for the first few years, net revenues will be modest. In fact, we expect them to be negative, as traffic ramps up. So negative to modest in the first few years. And what's been designed is an alignment of incentives so that when the splitting begins, all of the portions that go to the U.S. government will be reinvested in economic development, regional economic development in the area, the U.S. side of the area, obviously, which is pro-cyclical. It reinforces, more traffic, higher revenues, more investment, and that's the way it moves forward. The underlying agreement that we have with Michigan remains the same. And so no sharing of tolls until all the debt is repaid. So it's a good deal for both sides. It gets things moving, and that's in the spirit of today's announcement, which is to get things moving.
Are you able to provide more information about the deal? Some sources are to us and to Bloomberg and Reuters are saying it's a 50% split, I guess, once the sharing starts happening. And if this is a Canadian project, why did you have to start giving? Why did you decide to start giving some of the revenue away?
The first thing is you quoted the overall amount of the capital investment of the project, around $6.5 billion. What we're talking about is very modest relative to the size of that. Okay, that's the first thing, just to give a sense. The second is that, as I'm going to repeat myself, but I think it's an important point, that it's aligned, the incentives are aligned here because the reinvestment in regional economic development on the Michigan side, mainly the Michigan side, that's obviously good for Michigan, but it's also good for Canada because it's going to reinforce the traffic. So we see the incentive alignment as a reasonable discussion. It's a good deal for Canada, good for the U.S., and it's great for both countries to have this bridge open, and we're looking forward to,
Is it 50%?
Thank you. Next question.
Mr. Prime Minister, Jerry Dewan from CTV News London. This region has among the highest unemployment levels of anywhere across the country. How are we looking to use this to address those concerns?
Yeah, well, my caucus colleagues from the region are here. We are very focused on exactly this issue. Part of the answer is in today's announcement. It's providing not just the scale of the investment, but also the certainty of a partnership. So longer-term certainty, which of course is going to help GDLS invest and build out as well. And this is where some of the international travel that we've been doing, the international meetings we've had, the deepening of our partnership with NATO, our agreement, for example, with Europe to be part of their defense procurement, the work we're doing with Gulf allies. This is where it starts to come together because it reinforces the efforts of the company which has always been very successful in exports. About 80% of the production goes for export from here, but it's reinforcing that opportunity in this more dangerous world. So that's a component in the defense sector, the defense industrial sector. At the same time, we need to help build out the supply chain in this sector and other sectors. So, for example, Minister McGuinty through Windsor, through here, has been meeting with, I'll give an example, this is one of many examples, but with tool and die makers in the region who can be suppliers more broadly as our industrial strategy moves forward. Of course, as well, we are working hard to get the right deal for Canada with the United States. We know they've changed their approach, but we're still negotiating with them on getting the right deal for that. And more broad diversification through reinvestment through, we have something called the Regional Tariff Response Fund, which is going directly back in here where we're recycling the revenues from the tariffs into the region. So it needs to be comprehensive. We're very seized with the scale of the challenge. Last point I would just make, if I would say there's a common thread to what we're doing, is we're focusing on what we can control. Not waiting for decisions out of Washington, but moving forward with Canadian solutions with other export partners that help create those good long-term jobs for the people of London and beyond.
Most of the challenges in this region stem from challenges in manufacturing sector specifically. Is there anything more broadly that you can do to help overall manufacturing issues?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've been doing, and it's starting to come into place, is we have changed the tax structure for investment in plant and equipment in manufacturing. In fact, not just plant and equipment, but basically all aspects of manufacturing. So we have now just passed through Parliament in recent months, the most attractive tax rate on new investment for manufacturing writ large. So that means plant and equipment, it means R&D, it means your ICT, your information technology components that come around. All of that is available for a super deduction, which is what it's called. But when you wrap that all together, it puts us in a position where the tax rate on investment in Canada is less than half the G7 average and 4 percentage points below the United States. So it now becomes very attractive. So we combine that with some of the other things we're doing and get the critical mass that way.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Prime Minister. Jonathan Juho from the London Free Press. I guess I just wanted to start by clarifying something. You mentioned 6,000 jobs for the next 8 years across Canada for the investment that you guys are making in this project. I'm curious, are these additional new 6,000 jobs, or, for example, are the employees hired by GDS counted in that number?
No, they're in that, but what we're getting is you get the certainty of those, the folks here get the certainty. Now, that certainty, I speak under the control of those who are actually running the business, but I can tell you from my experience in business is that that certainty and the quality of the product and the relationships that we're building, Canada's building, the company has, but we're building internationally, provides the platform for the export expansion. And that's where you start to see the big increments. But the certainty cements those jobs. And then the nature of the supply chain, what they've built out, gets that extra 10,000 across Canada.
Okay. So in that case, is there a way to get sort of like a breakdown of what actually will be new jobs that are going to be generated? Because talking to many sectors, you're talking about the spin-off effect and the benefit that investment like this would have in other manufacturing companies and all of that. But talking to them, they're finding it hard to sort of like even getting to be part of that supply chain. So it's not only like this investment expanding on its own right away, but I don't know if there are supports that they need to get into it kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So the core of your question is something. Thank you for the question because it gets to one of the key elements of a strategic partnership framework. Again, predictability, visibility of what the needs are going to be of the Canadian government, the Canadian Armed Forces, that can mean joint R&D, but also our ability through the Department of Industry, through the Department of National Defense, through RMPs and others to work with companies that will be part of that supply chain. I referenced one of the things that the Minister of National Defense has been doing, which ministers of national defense wouldn't have done in the past. But one of the things he's been doing is sitting down with companies, bringing together core companies that will be either are or likely to be strategic partners, so-called primes, with an emphasis on them being Canadian, obviously, and putting them in the room with potential suppliers that perhaps had supplied other aspects of manufacturing, could have been part of the broader auto industry manufacturing chain. And that's part of what we're doing. Now, these are businesses. They make their decisions accordingly, but providing that predictability, the scale of this is very large, what we have to do to protect Canadians, protect our allies, and then making those connections, all of that is part of that flywheel that we're creating. So predictability, more business, better understanding, and then building out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. Prochaine question.
Hi, Jessica Singer with CBC. Much of central Canada is dealing with wildfires and smoke pollution, as we feel very much here in London. This is just days after you announced plans for a new oil pipeline. What do you say to Canadians who believe these current climate conditions are a sign we should lean into our climate targets rather than drop some of them?
Well, first off, I absolutely agree. And it's not leaning, I'll use your phrase, leaning in, but the way the government views leaning in is actually putting the investment in the ground that's going to achieve those climate targets. We've relied too much on targets, laws that weren't driving the actual investment that's necessary to reduce emissions. So we've shifted our focus to get that investment driven. Core to that is the electricity strategy, which we're currently consulting on, doubling the scale of our grid over the course of the next couple of decades, a grid that's almost 85% clean power. The intention is to maintain that, do that in a way, and everybody in this room would be living through the challenges and affordability in various ways. So we need to do it in a way that is also preserves affordability for Canadians. We have amongst the lowest electricity costs in the world. We want to keep those. And so a climate strategy that looks to affordability in the short term and builds those emission reductions with major investments. And what you see is the investments or the major projects that we're helping to catalyze are low carbon. So that new oil pipeline, as a precondition of that new oil pipeline is the Pathways project, okay, which is the equivalent of removing 90% of the vehicles on Alberta roads. As another precondition is a 75% reduction in methane in Alberta. As another precondition is a carbon market that actually works, just isn't a carbon market in name. And I will underscore, and this is, if you want one illustration of the difference in our approach, is that theoretically the carbon price is over $100 right now. But the carbon price in the actual markets has fell to about $20. So the effective, the gap between what was the objectives, what was said, what was legislated, and what was happening was enormous. And we're shifting the approach to make sure that there isn't a gap and the focus is in that investment. Last point, if I may, I'll hand back. Climate is a global issue, and that's why we have maintained our global climate finance. That's a rarity in the G7. We're the only countries, I think we are the only country who's maintained our level of global climate finance because we need to obviously globally get emissions down outside of Canada.
Thank you. And what do you expect to accomplish when you sit down with premiers next week in Charlottetown? And will you address concerns from some provinces that Alberta is getting a better carbon price under their implementation agreement?
Thank you. That's one of the issues that we'll talk about, which is, and our objective, and is to have as national a carbon market as possible. Quebec has its own carbon market linked in with California, so I'm going to put Quebec aside for these purposes. But more broadly, the way we've structured the carbon market with Alberta, it will need some short-term adjustments for provinces. We've been clear about British Columbia, for example, some compensation there, given the difference in the price. But it actually creates an ability to have a much more effective carbon market that would benefit if more provinces were part. So we're not going to announce that or decide that in Charlottetown, but we're there. More broadly, we really want to reinforce progress being made on creating one Canadian economy. Canadians want one economy, and they want skilled workforce to be able to move around. They want goods and services to move around seamlessly across the country. We need to amp that up. There's progress that's been made. Federal government's done everything it can do directly and needs to. And last point, which goes to your first question, is the electricity strategy and making major progress on that. And some of the big levers in order to get that investment in place, the federal government will put on the table. Thank you.
Last question, dernière question.
Josiane Chauraye-Biamani, Radio-Canada. Monsieur Carney, qu'est-ce que ça vous fait de voir que le nord de l'Ontario brûle en ce moment, alors que le Canada s'éloigne de ses cibles climatiques sous l'action de votre gouvernement?
La dernière phrase, c'est quoi, pardon?
Je peux répéter la question. Oui. Monsieur Carney, qu'est-ce que ça vous fait de voir que le nord de l'Ontario brûle en ce moment, alors que le Canada s'éloigne de ses cibles climatiques sous l'action de votre gouvernement?
Oui, non, OK. Notre gouvernement a reçu les résultats de l'ancien gouvernement. Ça, c'est la vérité. Ce n'est pas le résultat des actions de notre gouvernement. Je viens d'arriver. Okay, je viens d'arriver avec une situation où on a des cibles importantes, on a des règles et des lois et des conflits avec les provinces et pas d'assez d'investissement dans les réductions des gaz à effet de serre. OK. Alors, nous sommes en train de changer totalement l'approche afin de mettre l'accent sur l'investissement afin de réduire des gaz à effet de serre. Par exemple, en ce qui concerne l'entente avec l'Alberta, on a le projet de Pathways, le plus grand projet de stockage de carbone du monde, équivalent de enlever 90% de tous les automobiles de l'Alberta. On a des réductions importantes, 75% de méthane en Alberta, c'est dans l'accord, et des améliorations de fonctionnement du marché du carbone en Alberta, et on espère à travers le Canada. Alors, on fait des grandes choses afin d'avoir d'investissements. Et point final, et je passe la parole à vous, mais c'est le dédoublement de l'énergie propre, de l'électricité propre à l'échelle, à travers du Canada pendant les prochaines 2 décennies. Ça, c'est le grand investissement. C'est l'action, pas des prohibitions, qui est plus importante afin de réduire les gaz à effet de serre.
Parfait. Comment répondez-vous aux élus américains qui demandent au Canada d'en faire plus pour éviter que le nord des États-Unis reçoive chaque année la fumée des feux de forêt?
C'est la responsabilité. Il faut avoir une contribution des Américains dans la lutte contre le changement climatique. Et je donne un exemple. OK. Maintenant, nous mettons l'accent sur l'investissement sur l'énergie propre. Aux États-Unis, il y a des prohibitions maintenant contre l'énergie propre. Par exemple, l'énergie éolienne. C'est un exemple. Deuxièmement, le Canada maintient nos efforts à l'échelle mondiale. Et les États-Unis réduisent leurs efforts à l'échelle mondiale. Alors, oui, les changements climatiques, c'est la responsabilité de tout le monde, vraiment tout le monde, y compris les États-Unis. Ça, c'est la réponse. Merci.
Merci. Cela conclut notre conférence de presse. That ends our conference.
Good.